Hey guys, you know who this is. This is Will, aka Death Viper 567, coming at you with another amazing video today. This time, let me just try to adjust this as much as I can. This time we're going to be talking about something that's been a passion of mine, probably one of my favorite hobbies for, past 12 years, I like to say, since about 2012. And that is Magic the Gathering. So, biggest thing about it is I've been playing since then, kind of on and off, especially when I was in the military. I wasn't playing because there wasn't anywhere around to play, but I just started recently, got back into it. Some doing different contact between games and guns and other stuff, and hopefully D&D whenever I get a chance to. I decided to start making videos about Magic too, mostly about reviews, I guess you could say deck techs of some sorts. And today, we are going to be reviewing and going over, I wouldn't say more on the money-wise version of it. Today, we're going to be going over the Timey whimey deck from Doctor Who. Can't tell. See? So, biggest reason we got these, my wife, she absolutely loves Doctor Who, and me, myself, personally, I love Doctor Who as well. It's been one of my all-time favorite shows going on since the Ninth Doctor, since Christopher Eccleston. I haven't really watched that much about the 13th Doctor and the 12th Doctor. But when we heard that Universes Beyond was going to be coming out with a amazing, I wouldn't say set, but commander decks for Doctor Who, we were amazed. Now, they said it was supposed to be an entire type of like play, set piece block, I would say. But in reality, from what I've seen, most of the cards are in the commander decks. And it kind of sucks they only got the collector boosters. But it's alright though. From what my wife pulled from her last one, she got about maybe $50 to $60 worth out of a $25 pack, which is awesome. But I'm going to be talking about this one specifically. The Timey Wimey deck with the 10th, 11th, 10th, the 11th, 10th, and 9th Doctors that are in it. And we've also added a few things like the 12th Doctor in it because he works phenomenally well in it. So, biggest thing I'm going to be talking about that is not how much it's going to cost, because it's going to cost you a pretty penny unless you go to Walmart and buy it for like 50 to 60 bucks, which is what a normal commander deck should cost you. But because people, I wouldn't say price gouging, but it is, spending about 90 bucks on it on Card Kingdom, Star City, or any of the TCGs that you guys go to, your local gaming shops, most of them will be having it for about 90 bucks. Is it worth it? 100%. Money-wise, yeah, it is worth about the 90 bucks that you spend on it. And when it comes to the synergy with the deck, as I will show y'all with all the cards and stuff and the different combos you can have in it, it's actually pretty good. Like, really, really well. Honestly, I have beaten the Commander Masters Eldrazi deck with it, the Sliver deck with it, even my Lord of the Rings Sauron the Dark Lord deck, which I did a few different things on that, which I would be doing a review on that, and even my Caverns of Ixalan Dinosaur deck, which I've done a good amount of stuff to upgrade it to make it very, very playable, even though it was out of the box. But this one, out of the box, even just without doing anything to it, is an amazing deck. Now, there's a few different YouTubers I watched that have reviewed it, and they have said that it is more under D or F tier, which I don't really see, honest to God, compared to the Commander Masters decks, where, other than the Eldrazi deck, like the colored decks, like the multicolored decks, like the Planeswalker Party, which from what I heard was like a blowout. It wasn't that good. The Enchantments deck, that ran really good with synergy, and then the one that everybody was excited and amazed for, which was the Sliver deck, which I played against with this deck and stomped. And that is because the Sliver deck, just out of the box, comes with almost all tap lands, which is ridiculous. When this has 3 colors, and most of the lands in it aren't even tap lands. I mean, yeah, you'll get, I think it's about 5 to 6 tap lands in there, but it's not like where more than half of the cards in there are tap lands, for the land at least. But I will say there is phenomenal things in it. Like, there is a I need to get this card because it is in, I think it was not Lost Caverns of Ixalan. But anyways, it's one of the cards from the Ixalan sets. I can't remember which one it was. I just know that it's a blue card. You tap it, you put it at the bottom of your library, and you take an extra turn. Now, when you play that with River Song, which she put in this deck too as well, you can take an infinite amount of turns, infinite things, and then same as with the Ninth Doctor with his ability, where you get an additional upkeep once you untap him, which is a phenomenal thing as well. Because at the beginning of your upkeeps, if you remember, that is when you lose a time counter or a suspend counter. And so you can start constantly playing, constantly maneuvering around different things. And I'll just show you guys most of the combo sets and stuff and break down the deck Barney style. But this will be my first real deck review of this. And honestly, I love the way it flows. It is a phenomenal, phenomenal deck. I can't say that too much. Like, the Lord of the Rings decks, there were some pretty good bangers. Like the Riders of Rohan one. That one was amazing. The Elven Council was okay if you play it right. Especially with Elvish Piper. Or even the Masters of Mordor deck. Or was it Shadows of Mordor? I can't remember what it's called, but it's the one with Sauron in it, and it lets you master songs. That one, once you replace the original commander with the commander from the set itself, which is Sauron the Dark Lord, it becomes 10 times better, because the other one doesn't really do that much for you. And I've also had it play against a Boros deck that it completely devastated. And also an Infect deck with Atraxa. Shockingly, it worked out. But I'll get to the deck review. Sorry, my brain just had a brain fart right there. But I will get to the deck review here shortly. And let's go ahead and take it. Alright guys, so I'm back. I've broken down the deck as Barney style as I can get right now. With different lands, all the instants and enchantments and sorceries, and then also the artifacts and the different creatures. But these are the main ones that you can switch out for your commanders and stuff from inside the deck. Of course, there's a few others, but if you want to keep to the Time Lord, the Doctor Who theme, with the Doctor being your commander, these are the different ones. So, what me and my wife did, we actually added, if I remember correctly, Clara Oswald and the 12th Doctor. So, I will give y'all the main ones that you want to focus on to actually make this an incredible deck with a really incredible synergy and just overpower your enemies by casting cards without paying any mana. Which it's going to be, it is a phenomenal thing to watch. As much as I hate being on the other side of it, it is still something interesting. So, let me go ahead, put the ones in order of how you should do it, or which ones you should have as your main commanders. So just give me a second here. Alright, so we're back. Now, this one, what you should have as your main commanders is the ones that originally come from out of the box as your commanders, which is Rose Tyler and the 10th Doctor. Now, the most impressive thing about this is that whenever Rose Tyler attacks, she gets a +1/+1 for each time counter that is on it. So, whenever she attacks, you put a time counter on each suspended card you own and each of the permanent you control with a time counter on it. So, how it's phrased is that you put a time counter on it literally for everything that is either suspended that you have or that has a time counter on it. And she works very, very phenomenal with the 10th Doctor. Now, the biggest way I say this is because what you want to do when you first attack, of course, if you have both of them out, which more than likely you will after about turn 4, turn 5, you want to attack with Rose Tyler. You're going to have the 10th Doctor pretty much just staying there as a defender almost. But whenever you attack, you exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card and put 3 time counters on it. If it doesn't have a suspend, it gains suspend. So what happens is when you attack with her, you want to do his trigger first, and then you get those 3 time counters. Guess what? This gets a +1/+1 time counter for it as well. And the main focus is getting her up right there. Now, I will show you another way to go about, because I've had her go all the way up to a 20/20. Well, no, actually a 24/24 before, because with his ability, every time you attack it adds more things to be suspended. Now, there are cards in here that have time travel, which makes it to where you can add or subtract a time or suspended counter from that card. And then there's other things that copy those spells, and it makes it amazing. Ridiculous, because not only can you use them to add time counters on her, you can also reduce time counters for those spells that you're trying to cast now. So let me go ahead and break it down Bonnie style for those cards, and I will get back. Now, these 4 cards right here are going to be your main focus to time travel. So you can get those time counters and remove those time counters from your other cards. And I will be going down these one by one, showing you what to really do with them. Because each one has its own unique thing with it, like for the Parting of the Ways. The second ability is the thing that makes you time travel, then time travel again. And then cloud spinning. You definitely want to do the buyback, because then guess what? You do a time travel, but it's not called time travel. Instead, you just choose a counter on target permanent or suspended card, remove that counter from that permanent or card, or put another one of those on it. So if you have a card like exactly Rose Tyler over here, you want to put another time counter on her, which will be freaking phenomenal. Then you also have things such as All of History All at Once right here, which makes you time travel, but it has Storm. So you copy it, which is awesome. So let's say you do the 10th Doctor's ability, which then guess what? You could actually have that enter with 3 time counters on it, and it's suspended for just 3 turns. So let's say you have the 12th Doctor out. Guess what? The first spell you cast from anywhere other than your hand each turn, Demonstrate. Demonstrate, you copy that for another target, so you time travel twice. Or another thing, which we've found out is probably amazing, is that since you are actually demonstrating and making a copy, you make 2 of these. Now, this card is very broken, Inspiring Refrain. I will get to that one in a minute. Another card, which is another phenomenal card to me, especially for what it does as a 1/1, which is phenomenal, is Time Beetle. It has Skulk, which means it can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. Most creatures you're going to see, at least in Commander from what I've seen, other than goblins or tokens, are going to be more than 1/1. So it's always going to get by. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you time travel with it. As an uncommon, a 2-drop for 1 blue and 1 colorless mana, that is phenomenal, especially for a deck like this. And you have Wibbly Wobbly, Timey, whimey. That is another amazing card. Now, if you especially have it exiled with time counters, it is still good because you still can copy it and do another copy. All of these can really revolve around the 12th Doctor, which makes you demonstrate and make copies of it. Like this one, you draw 2 cards, then you may exile a non-land card from your hand with the number of time counters on it equal to the mana value. Then your target opponent does the same. Is it still good? Yes, because you still time travel, and you still get to draw 2 cards. And if you copy it, if you had it suspended, boom, you do it again, which is phenomenal. Everything really in this deck really revolves around the suspend and time counters. And if you do it right, you can phenomenally change the game and pretty much crush your opponents very fast. I will show you the biggest ways how, and the biggest things that really break this deck down and make it into a phenomenal deck to play against. One of the biggest cards you really want to keep on playing in this deck, especially if you get it, is Inspiring Refrain. Biggest reason is because you draw 2 cards and you exile Refrain with 3 time counters on it. Now, interesting thing is, if you get it and you exile it with this, and you have 3 time counters on it, then let's say you have where's he at? Here we go. The 12th Doctor out as well. When its time counters are up, the first spell you cast from anywhere other than your hand each turn has Demonstrate. You copy it. That means you are drawing every 3 turns 4 cards. Because it says exile Inspiring Refrain with 3 time counters on it. It is broken as all hell, in all honesty. And the first time I had that used against me from my wife, because she plays this deck the most, and it has the best amount of synergy, because I taught her how to play it. Using that, oh my god. You're drawing every 3 turns 4 new cards. And that is just ridiculous. I don't know why people said it wasn't that good of a deck. It might be because of the lands, which, in all honesty, looking at the lands, it's still not bad, honestly. I mean, there's not really much you could probably do except maybe put a few shock lands in there or fetch lands that could probably, shuffle up and make it go a little bit faster. But now we are going to be going into the other things that really break the deck down before we get into the synergy of the different mana cost and the lands and the artifacts and the instants and sorceries in it that really make this deck go. Alright, so these are going to be your main, I would say, like, your main cards that really do break this deck in one or more ways with either time counters or you get an additional upkeep step, or, honestly, whenever you do combat damage to a person, because they work very, very well, efficient, and when you time travel, with such as the moment, you can put another time counter on things that exile creatures, especially Crack in Time, where when it enters the battlefield at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, every pre-combat main phase, you exile target creature an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. It enters with Vanishing 3, which is 3 time counters on it. And let's say at every single, at the beginning of every single upkeep, especially with him, you'd be removing one, but you could also, like I said, tap, which one? No. Yeah, that one right there. Rotating Fireplace, where it gives you time travel, activate only as a sorcery. So you could keep on adding more and more time counters to it. So every creature they bring out, you could literally just wipe it out right then and there. You don't have to really do much to it. Now, there is another card in here, which I will get to in a minute, which really, really demonstrates the power of this deck. And I will show you in a minute real quick. Alright, so these cards right here sorry, are the ones that can really break this deck and make it into a really big, just unstoppable monster, especially bringing out different cards that'll draw you cards, exile different people's cards, bring cards back, especially copying them, and just all in all, just wiping the board. And these are literally the main ones that you can literally have as any of your commanders. And that is going to be Amy Pond, Donna Noble, Claire Oswald, the 9th Doctor, the 10th Doctor, and the 11th Doctor, and River Song. River Song, if I remember correctly, she's not in this deck, but we added her in it, and she works phenomenally. Especially when your opponents, because most people in their decks these days have some type of scry mechanic, or whenever they search the library, especially for land cards. She gets a +1/+1 counter on her. You can see it right here. Then it deals damage equal to damage to a player equal to its power. So let's say, okay, they go ahead and cultivate, looking for a specific, forest or something like that, or a forest seat, because a lot of green ramp decks, especially dinosaurs, love to look for lands. So every time she's getting +1/+1 and dealing more and more damage. So literally, almost every single turn, you could literally be hitting, especially when you have scry abilities too. Or surveils, however the fuck you say it. But it really works phenomenally well because it'll constantly be doing damage to a person, and if they're not careful, she's gonna get pretty big. Because my wife actually had her up to, I think it was a 6/6, and I was only at like 8 health. Yeah, I decided not to scry for my last card because that would have been death. Even it gave me the option. Well, it didn't give me the option. I had to scry, so I had to die. But man, that sucks. But another thing with her is that there is another card that came out at Nixon to where when you tap it for, I think it was 1 white and 1 colorless, 2 blue. Tap it, you put it at the bottom of your library, you take an extra turn. With her, you draw cards from the bottom of your library rather than the top. So you constantly can get infinite turns with her. I need to get that card for this deck because then it will run phenomenally smooth. Like, amazing. Now, there is another card, which is just a regular creature. No, it wasn't a regular creature. Well, anyways, let me go ahead and get through these ones. So another thing is, with Clara Oswald right here, it's best to have her in your deck than on your side with your commander, because she is a Doctor's Companion, which means you can have 2 commanders as long as your other commander is the Doctor. So, she become, if she is your commander, you choose a color before the game begins, and she is the chosen color. It doesn't really change her mana cost or none of that. That's literally it. But the big thing she does is, if a trigger ability of a Doctor you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So, for the biggest thing for the Doctors, because you will be mostly running these 3 right here, the 9th, 10th, and 11th. So, with the 9th, you can additionally copy him twice for his ability. So when it triggers, you can trigger it twice. 2 additional upkeeps. So that's 3 upkeeps. 3 times that you are actually getting time counters taken off your stuff that is in your exile and bringing it back faster. Or, whenever you attack with him, since it triggers, guess what? It triggers twice. You get 2 different things with 3 time counters on it, which brings up River Song to proportional amazing levels. And then also with the 11th Doctor, with his ability, I Am Talking, whenever the 11th Doctor deals combat damage to a player, you may exile a card from your hand with the number of time counters on it equal to the mana value. If it doesn't have suspend, it gains suspend. With that, if you do the combat damage, guess what? Her ability triggers, so you do it an additional time, twice. That means you could literally have 2 other things out there with time counters on it. Now, there will become a time where when you're playing with this deck where it might slow down and grind because of these time counters. I haven't really had that happen yet because you have things that time travel, for one, especially some artifacts that, like Rotating Fireplace, where whenever you time travel with it, you're steadily getting rid of and gaining time counters to things that you need them to get removed from and things that you need them getting put on. Now, another amazing thing is also this one right here. Donna Noble. She has Soul Bond. So, whenever she is bonded with a creature, whenever she is dealt damage with the creature it's paired with is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent. So, biggest thing to really look out for is things with First Strike or Death Touch. But then again, any damage that is dealt to her is dealt right back to their face. That is a very tough thing to really get rid of unless you have some type of exile or destroy target creature. And the thing with her is that, let's say you have her with even the 10th Doctor, or even the there was another, or even Blasphemous Act. If they had Blasphemous Act in this deck, which I need to get for it, that would work amazingly well. 13 to each creature. You can be hitting for 26 damage in 1 turn because of her. That is pretty much a Boros Reckoner, but for 4 mana, and has Soulbound, which is phenomenally awesome. And then also Amy Pond. She brings other things too with time counters on it. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, choose a suspended card you own and remove that many time counters from it. Right now it's a 2/2. There's a few things in here that give them +1/+1s, especially like, let's see, I don't know how to put it. Kate Stewart. You may pay 8. If you do, attack creature gets +X/+X, where X is the number of time counters among permanents you control. Even then, with the 2 damage that it can do to somebody is phenomenal, because most things you will bring out will have between 2 to 3 time counters on it. And here's another thing also. Roy Williams, because she is partnered with Roy Williams. He has first strike and lifelinks. When you cast a spell from anywhere other than exile it with 3 time counters on it, it gains suspend, then investigate. So the biggest thing with him is probably more than likely get him with that. That's a pretty big thing. He's not that good of a card. He's decent. He does what he needs to. But other than that, there's really not much I can really go on to more about it, except for more of the how much each card's costs, what their levels are, and the amount of mana you get, because the amount of mana you get is a pretty good amount, especially for a deck like this, which it runs phenomenal when it runs. So let me go ahead and get these out of the way and get everything broken down into mana. Now, if you guys can't tell, I am bringing this down into mana values. I had to adjust the camera by holding it because I don't have a big enough tripod for it. But anyways, the biggest things, as you can tell, you're going to be playing are mostly mana level 1s and, 2s and 3s. Now, and 4s. Now, if you see, the biggest things you definitely want to hit are going to be, especially with the 10th Doctor for exiling and getting time counters, are going to be your 6s and higher. The highest one costs 10 mana, which also has a convoke thing. So in reality, it's probably going to cost you, by the time you get it, maybe at the most 5. Or hell, you could even hit it with time counters, which would be phenomenal. But that's the biggest things. Next to also getting your dual cards right there, your other 2 that I like to say, those ones you definitely want to hit with time counters. Now, as you can tell, by just the way it flows, the synergy with the amount of mana that you need to spend for everything works out very, very, very well. Now, as you can tell, for your 1-drops, you have Soul Ring, Clock Spinning, and Path to Exile, which, of course, clock spinning's the one way you remove a time counter, you can, or add one to it. And Path to Exile, of course, you exile target creature. Now, if you can't tell, your 2 mana drop ones are mostly going to be like your mana rocks, like your Arcane Signet. You're going to have your Lightning Greaves with Haste and Shroud, your Talisman of Conviction and Talisman of Creativity, your Mind Stone to help draw cards, and your Thought Vessel as well. And you're also going to have an amazing card called Regenerations Restored, which, if you actually do time counter it for just those 3, you will take an extra turn within 3 or less turns at that point. And then for your 3 mana value, it's mostly going to be your creatures or different like exile spells. As you can tell, there is really no counter spells in this deck, which sucks, but at the same time, it's understandable. And there's really no burn spells either. But that's because you also have things to exile stuff. And then you have your 5-drops like the 12th Doctor, which we added to it, the Day of the Doctor, and Fractured Identity. Which, if I remember correctly, Fractured Identity, yeah, that exiles target non-land permanent. And then each other player, then its controller creates a copy of a token of it. Which is another amazing, phenomenal card, especially if somebody has an Eldrazi out, which, when you exile it, you can create a copy of that Eldrazi, especially if it's Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, or Emrakul. And Ulamog. Definitely Ulamog, because then you're automatically going to be taking another turn anyways. Then you have your 6-drops, which you definitely want to hit with the time counters. And the biggest one that I think we might take out is the Dinosaurs on the Spaceship, even though the suspend makes sense because you can suspend it for 5 mana. Is it 5? Yeah, 5 mana instead of 6. And each turn you gain a 2/2 red and white dinosaur creature token with flying and haste, which is pretty tight. And yeah, this is pretty much breaking it down to the levels of mana. As you can tell, it is very, very like synergy good. It's not too bad. It works well. Trust me, it really, really works well. And now we're going to break down the mana so you guys can see which ones are tap, which ones are dual, and which ones are regular lands. Alright, now these are the lands that come in as dual lands, pain lands, or your all color lands. And then on the right side, if you can't tell, we have the temples and a celestial colonnade and irrigated farmland. These are your tap lands that come in as tapped. So for your tap lands, you really only have 8 cards that come in tapped. It's not really too much, I'd say. And they're not bad tap lands because, I mean, the temples, of course, yeah, they're pretty cheap temples, of course, but they scry you 1, which makes you look at the top cards. Now, for your ones that come in tapped, you have such things as, of course, Path of Ancestry, which, of course, it comes in tap, but it's also a multicolor land. And you have your tricolor Mystic Monastery. Then you also have the Driving Bluff, which, when it enters the battlefield, you choose color other than red, and it becomes 2 of those colors. So those make sense. Now, temples, there's nothing really against it. If you guys want to, the biggest thing I would say to upgrade is to do pretty much shock lands, badlands, or fetch lands into it. Badlands, I know they're going to cost you a pretty penny, but shock lands and fetch lands shouldn't cost you too much if you want to replace those, because you really have literally, you could place one with a Sacred Foundry, Steam Vents, and God, what's the other one? I can't remember what it's called. It's the Azorius one, Hollowed Fountain. And then you can have a Arid Mesa, say that thing it was, the red-white fetch land, and also you could have the blue-red fetch land, which is Golden Tarn, which I have a few in my modern deck, which I will go ahead and do a deck tech of that later on, but not right now. But of course, the biggest lands that you're gonna want that are gonna come out. So these could enter the battlefield tapped, but the biggest thing is most of them come in untapped if you have either 2 or more lands, 2 or fewer lands, or if you have a plains, island, or mountain in your hand that you can reveal. So I don't really count them as tap lands because in reality the biggest thing is you're not going to have them come out tapped. More likely you're going to have them come out untapped. And then you, of course, you have your Exotic Orchard, which if you're playing against another Jeskai aggro type of commander deck, you know, it works perfectly well. If you have anything that has red, white, or blue in it, works perfectly well with. And then you have, of course, your obvious Command Tower, which is still an amazing card. It's always going to be in the commander decks forever now. And then you have your pain lands over here like Sunbait Canyon and Fire Outlet. These 2 things, though, the interesting thing is you could tap 1, sacrifice it, and draw a card. Or you can pay 1 life and tap it for a mountain or an island, which is still pretty good because they come out on the battlefield untapped. You can go ahead and hit yourself for 1 life and bring something out turn 1, like a Soul Ring, if you ain't got no other mana in your hand, which is phenomenal. Now we're going to be moving on into the legendary lands, the artifacts, and the regular lands, so you guys can see how much of each one it has in it, and how this deck really flows with the lands. Now we're getting into what I would say your colorless lands are, or your sacrifice lands. One of the biggest ones, of course, it's always going to be in every single deck from here on to the ends of the earth, which is Evolving Wilds. There's nothing wrong with Evolving Wilds. It searches for what it needs to, which is a basic land. Still, to me, one of the most OP cards in this game. JK. And then you have things like Ominous Cemetery, which, you know, exile it, and you target creature's owner shuffles it into their library. So, that right there is okay. I would say it might be better switching out for something else, Because, I mean, of course, you exile it, but target creatures only shuffles it into the library. So that could be a pretty decent removal for 5 in case you ain't got nothing else. Now, another thing is you also have what I've noticed in several of the new decks, Temple of the False God, which is a phenomenal land card. You can tap it for 2 colorless and activate only if you control 5 or more lands. Most of the time, by the time you put it out, you're gonna have more than 5 lands, which is awesome. And Rogue's Passage, that's a pretty decent colorless land too, where you pay for tapping target creature can't be blocked this turn. For such things as the... Now, it looks like I got a little bit more time, so I had to delete some things from the camera so that I could get some more footage, but anyways, as I was talking about, I was talking about Rogue's Passage. These are your colorless lands. In reality, to me, they're not that many. Altogether, with those and the dual lands and the tricolor lands, it's about 27 lands right there in total, not including, of course, you have your legendary, which is Translucent Clock Tower, which when you tap it, you add 1 blue mana and you put a Time Cloud on it. When you remove 12 of them, you shuffle your graveyard and hand into your library and draw 7 cards. Only time you can activate, of course, is when you have a Time Lord, which, of course, when you have the 10th Doctor out, or one of the other Doctors, which is not too hard to get, you could do that really fast and really easily, which, it helps. It pretty much resets your board for you. Now, you have the War Room, which, if you tap it and pay 3, you pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity and draw a card. It's okay. I say it just costs too much mana to just pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color, which for the 10th Doctor would be just 2. Or, yeah, just 2. And you draw a card. So, I mean, it does what it needs to, but I don't see it getting paid that much. And in Thespian Stage, it becomes a copy of target land, except it has this ability. Now, biggest thing I would see you wanting to use it for is more than likely like Rogue's Passage, because you could tap for 8 mana and 2 creatures of yours cannot block this turn. Now we're about to go ahead and get into the regular basic lands and show you how many there are, which in all honesty there's really not that many, but it's mostly due to the dual lands and stuff in here, which even then it's still pretty good. Now, if you guys can't tell, let me just adjust the camera. Now, if you guys can't tell, there is literally only 9 basic land cards in here. If you can't tell, me and my wife switched out a few, especially the islands, for the Ixalan Islands, because we think they look pretty good, pretty awesome. Now, would this say it makes a shitty deck? No, because altogether it has 36 lands in it, which is the amount you really want in a commander deck to make it flow, especially for a deck like this, where it doesn't have too many high cost cards, and the ones you do, you want to hit with a 10th Doctor. But it has enough in there to where you're gonna get mana, as long as you don't get mana logged out, which has not happened with this deck phenomenally, which is awesome. Now, this is the part where we're gonna get into the last little bits of this. So let me go ahead, put up this deck real quick, get it all put together and stuff, and I'll catch you. Alright guys, now we're back after reviewing and doing a deck tech review of this precon, which is the Timey whimey precon from the Doctor Who Universe's Beyond set, which I will say is a phenomenal deck. Now, the next one I'm probably going to do is the Blast from the Past one, because that is one of my other favorite decks, although it needs a lot of work compared to this. And then I might do one also onto the Dinosaur, the Velociraptor deck, as they call it for the Lost Conference of Exelon. Altogether, I give this deck, I'd say about a 9 out of 10 to 8 out of 10. Biggest reason is because, one, it doesn't really have any burn spells or counter spells, but the biggest thing that it makes up for it with is exile and stuff. I wouldn't say destroying, but more of removing cards from the board that you want to get rid of. As for the synergy with it, the cards have their reasons to be there, and they all work phenomenally well when they are together. and the synergy with it is flawless. You get that right type of amount of to where the mana level doesn't go up drastically from like maybe like 3 1s and like 10 2s all the way up to like 15 to 20 like level, like 4 mana level or like 5 mana level cards. No, it gradually, you have a lot of you have 3 1s, a lot of 2s, a lot of 3s, quite a few little 4s, mana level 4s here, and then you have a couple of 5s, and then 1 6 7, and then 1 10. But those ones, like I said, you want to get out with the 10th Doctor. You want to be putting on time counters on them. You want to accumulate onto Rose Tyler. Now, I would say some of the biggest things to possibly do to keep Rose Tyler out there, to keep it away from board wipes and stuff. I wouldn't even really say board wipes, but more from being a target. There is a few cards in here like Everybody Lives, where it makes all your creatures indestructible and stuff. It makes people hexproof, and you can't lose the game, you can't win the game, nobody can gain life. Phenomenal. That can stop her from getting killed. I would say another big upgrade you want to put in, even though it costs a little bit of mana, would be more like Spectral Ward. Which, you know, it gives the creature, I think it was +3/+3, and protection from all colors. Phenomenal card. That just means that whenever it's blocked by something, no damage gets through to it, no damage gets through to the other creature. Fine. It's awesome. Now, for the doctors and stuff, I say the best way to play them is to get Clara Oswald out as well. You can't have her as your secondary commander, but I like Rose Tyler better because you get that beefy creature right at the beginning on turn 2, which already starts beefing up, because by then you should have at least between 1 to 2 cards in suspend because of their abilities. Now, Clara Oswald, if you do have it as your secondary commander, of course you're going to pick it as white with the 10th Doctor, which whenever, you know, his ability triggers, you additionally trigger it twice. Hopefully, you should have Rose Tyler in your deck, which you might have pulled at that time. Altogether, it's a really great deck. There's not much I can really say about it, other than just pick it up, try it out. If you can, all in all, this deck is phenomenal. I would definitely say pick it up. You won't be able to win any Pro Tours or anything with it, or any... I mean, you might be able to win some competitive CEDH command events. I won't say it, but you definitely get there. And it's a fun deck to get through. It's very complicated. It takes time to get used to it. And when you do, it is totally worth it. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Like the video if you subscribe. Hopefully I'll be doing these more. Hopefully maybe every Friday or Saturday I will be putting out another one of these deck tech videos, or even, you know, a bundle opening. Right now I wouldn't say a booster box opening because they cost a pretty penny, but maybe a Ravnica Remastered one, because Ravnica Remastered is probably one of my all-time favorite sets. It is, to me, I wouldn't say remastered, but Ravnica is one of my favorite places to go in the Magic universe, next to Phyrexia. Because that is where I started way back in 2012. No. Yeah. I was playing with Rise of Eldrazi and everything, but no, what was it? 2013. 2013, when Return to Ravnica came out. That was the deck I started with. Well, not deck, but block I started with. And it is still one of my all-time favorites. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Like the video if you're subscribed. Comment what you think. You know, anything helps this channel. I want to get as many viewers as I can, as many subscribers as I can. Thank y'all for watching. As always, deuces.